That was three. Number four, numero quattro.
Okay. There we are, cuatro.
A story is not a portfolio. And a portfolio is not a story necessarily. So if you are someone who is used to walking around and what I would call swinging for the fence, hitting like single image home runs, doing a story is going to be a very different experience, because a story is often not comprised of 10 outstanding singular images. A story is comprised of images that tell a narrative.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that requires you to photograph things and include things in a story that may not be aesthetically pleasing, but they're very important informationally to allow the viewer to understand the story. It could be a detail. It could be a portrait. It could be a photograph of a document. It could be a photograph of a mailbox that gives you an address. All of these little pieces, I call them transitional files.
Yeah.
These transitional files that link one aspect of a story to the next. And sometimes they're amazing visual images, and sometimes they're not. Take a look at National Geographic. You know, historically, that's obviously a photo-heavy magazine, but there's plenty of images in that magazine that are what I would call informational images that are scattered in with the home runs that the photographer has made.
Yeah.
You know, if you take a photographer like, I don't know, anyone that shoots a very visually sophisticated photograph, if you put 20 of those in a National Geographic spread, I don't think that audience is going to respond to that, you know, because the National Geographic audience is older. A lot of them have been reading that publication and have been around that organization for decades. And, you know, some of this new hot hit, super sophisticated visual stuff does not play in that crowd.
Right.
Whereas, you know, some of those images may play on something like TikTok or Instagram, but, you know, going into a magazine that is about long form documentary content requires a different style of photograph. I mean, historically, the covers of the National Geographic are very, very basic photographs. They're very strong, but they're very basic. And that's because they're trying to tell stories. And that's a totally different thing. So think story, not portfolio necessarily. You can pull a portfolio from your story, but oftentimes if you're going to print a magazine or a book or something, you've got to really include a lot of other kinds of images.
You know, there's a flip side to that too, Dan. I do a lot of critiquing, and one of the comments I'll make is, this to me looks like a transitional image. It's not a standalone image. And it doesn't stand by itself as a strong image, because it would work fine if you saw what came before it and what came after it. But that's something you got to think about. Does this singular image stand by itself, or is it really part of a bigger story? And you have to differentiate those two things, because you can't switch one to the other. You got to know what you're doing on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, sometimes you get lucky and you get a standalone image out of the blue, right? You're in the right place, right time, right moment, right light, right composition, right timing, and you get it. Those happen a few times a year at best. So you're always starting sort of wide and you're walking your way in. So I think when you're doing stories like this, you put yourself in an environment where you know you can make your style of photograph. That's step one. Step two is you wait for the right light. You see the pieces moving on the board in front of you, and you start to compose that in the way that you see the world, not the way someone else does, not the way Instagram tells you to take photographs. None of that. You've got to figure out who you are, how you see. So again, you've put yourself in an environment where something's happening. You've gotten access. You're in the right light. You're starting to compose things. Now you're looking for those home run images. That's what I'm doing, is I'm looking for a home run image from every scenario, but oftentimes it's not there. So you're covering, making images of what is there, hoping that this home run thing is going to come along. And, you know, the more you practice, the better you get at looking at how pieces are moving in front of you, the more likely you are to get a home run style image. But it's hard. I mean, you know, the last time I went in the field to really work on a project was a couple of years ago. And, you know, I shot for probably 2 weeks, and, you know, there's a couple of
While Dan is catching up, I'm gonna call something to your guys' attention here. What he just said in less than 5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, we could comprise a whole course on this. Putting yourself in the right location, getting into the right light, looking for the home run, all those things. That's a drill. This is how to become an amazing photographer. If you can literally just we should transcribe that, Dan, because what you said in a few words is an entire approach to photography that you guys can hone in on and develop. Are we back here let's see if we can hear you now. We lost your audio, but I did want to underscore what you just said here, because you guys, all of us, think back when you have done those things, when you have actually put yourself in the right place, you've looked at the light, you've watched. I love what you said, Dan, watch the pieces coming together, because it is like a jigsaw puzzle. I mean, that's the whole thing with composition, is you can see something happening.
5 is, I should put this in all caps, because it goes against everything in our culture, in our society, and especially against online culture, which is, you've got to take your time.
Yeah.
You have got to take your time. Good stories do not come quickly, and there's no substitute for time and access. The more time, the better the work. The more access, the better the work.
Yeah.
The less time, the less access. If you're in a race to shoot and put it online and shoot and put it online, don't bother.
Yeah.
Don't even bother trying to do stories. And plus, you're going to aggravate everybody that you're photographing. Because let me just tell you this, no matter what they say, they don't like that. It feels like exploitation when you're shooting and posting and shooting and posting and shooting and posting. That has nothing to do with the people in your photographs. And oftentimes, even though they won't tell you to their face, behind the scenes, they're like, this is annoying. I feel like this is a promotion campaign for the photographer. So
yeah.
If you're addicted to post, then do something else on the side, or post the food you're eating or some other thing that, satisfies, scratches that itch you have, but don't treat your project that. So this
Good
is
one.
point 5, sub point A. Do not share your project as you're going.
There you go.
Yeah, because it waters down the entire idea of what you're doing. And it annoys the people in your photographs that you're posting, shooting and posting and shooting and posting. They don't want that.
Yeah.
And it makes you look like you have no attention span. And a project is better when it's released as a whole. So sitting there and shooting and posting and shooting and posting is just not a smart idea. I know that goes counterintuitive.
No, a footnote on that.
Everyone is saying.
That's really true on the whole creative process. It's like if you're in the middle of writing a story, you don't start sharing it with anybody. It's not finished. Wait until you have your first draft. Then you have one trusted person maybe look at it at that point. You're not sharing it out with anybody else, though. Isn't that true? I mean, and that's true with photography, filmmaking, really any creative process. If you start putting it out there too soon, it interrupts your flow. You're going to get feedback that you don't really want at that point. You haven't even finished the project yet. Just saying, It is.
I think it's also a bit insulting to the people in the photographs. Yeah, it's just, if you're the subject of a photographer, and that photographer is standing there and shooting and posting and shooting and posting, it's just insulting.
Yeah.
It just is kind of like, it's so just disconnects you from the experience of being in the project. And great photographers do not do that. They may share a behind the scenes picture or something trivial or inconsequential, but they're not going to dump a third of a project online, and then another third, and then another third, and then expect anyone to pay attention by the time that third comes out.
Yeah.
People just don't have that bandwidth anymore.
Please subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new shows. Like the video and please share it and leave your comments. I love hearing from you. And remember to get out and capture your own images of life.